The old garage sat at the end of Mapleton Drive, its faded sign creaking in the autumn breeze. Inside, dust particles danced in the slanting afternoon light, while the radio played classic rock at a volume just loud enough to hear over the metallic clanking of tools. Michael Foster lay beneath a rusted Chevy, his broad shoulders pressed against the cold concrete as he twisted a wrench with practiced precision. Grease stained his forearms like war paint, evidence of a decade spent rebuilding engines, instead of the aerospace designs he'd once drafted at Boeing. A loud crack echoed through the garage as the support jack shifted unexpectedly, the weight of the Chevy's chassis suddenly threatening to collapse. Michael's breath caught in his throat, muscles tensing as he calculated the narrow margin between life and crushing weight. "Jason, get me the red hydraulic now." His voice remained measured despite the danger, years of fatherhood teaching him that panic only breeds panic. Jason Foster's sneakers squeaked against the concrete as he raced across the garage floor. At 10 years old, he moved with the awkward energy of a boy caught between childhood and something else, his narrow shoulders carrying a backpack still too large for his frame. He grabbed the red hydraulic jack, dragging it toward his father's outstretched hand. "Is it going to fall, Dad?" "Not today." Michael's fingers closed around the jack's handle, sliding it into position with a practiced motion. The metal groaned as he pumped the lever, slowly lifting the car's weight away from his chest. "See, problem solved. Always a solution if you don't panic." He slid out from beneath the Chevy, wiping his hands on a rag that had long ago surrendered its original color to engine grease. Jason shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes downcast as he pulled a crumpled paper from his backpack. "Mr. Larson gave us this today for the advanced science field trip." He thrust the permission slip forward like it might bite. "It's to the Boeing Research Center. We'd see the wind tunnels and everything." Michael scanned the form, his expression unchanging, even as his eyes lingered on the fee amount, $350. Might as well be $3,500 with the garage's current finances. The mortgage payment was already 2 weeks late, and Mrs. Keene's transmission still needed parts he couldn't afford to order. "That's quite the opportunity, buddy." "So I can go. Tyler and Emma are both going, and Mr. Larson said I should definitely be there since I got the highest score on the physics test." Hope brightened Jason's face, making him look younger than his years. Michael folded the form carefully, tucking it into his pocket instead of making a promise he might have to break. "We'll figure something out." The words hung between them, heavier than any engine block he'd ever lifted. A comfortable silence settled as they fell into their after-school routine. Jason spread his homework across the small desk in the office corner, while Michael returned to the Chevy, the familiar rhythm of work temporarily pushing financial worries to the background. The wall clock ticked past 6, then 7. The Seattle autumn darkness falling early outside the garage's windows. Michael was locking up the toolboxes when the storm hit, rain hammering against the metal roof like thousands of tiny fists. "Perfect timing," he muttered, glancing at Jason, who had fallen asleep head pillowed on his science textbook. Michael draped his jacket over his son's shoulders, deciding to let him rest while he finished closing up. The screech of tires cut through the drumming rain, followed by the unmistakable sound of an engine in distress, a high-pitched whine that made Michael wince. Headlights swept across the garage windows as a vehicle pulled into the lot, moving too fast for the wet conditions. Michael stepped outside, rain immediately soaking through his flannel shirt as he watched a Mercedes E-Class skid to a stop, smoke billowing from under its hood in defiance of the downpour. The driver's door opened slowly, revealing a woman who moved with deliberate care, one hand gripping the car frame for support. Even through the curtain of rain, Michael noticed her slight limp, the way her right leg seemed to drag slightly against the asphalt. She wore dark slacks and a simple blue blouse beneath a light jacket. Business attire, but nothing flashy. Her dark hair was cut in a practical bob that framed a face more interesting than beautiful, with high cheekbones and eyes that seemed to assess the garage with scientific precision. "You're still open," she called over the rain, her voice carrying a note of relief rather than forming a question. "Technically closed, but that engine sounds like it's not giving you much choice." Michael gestured toward the garage bay. "Pull it in if you can still start it." The woman nodded, sliding back into the driver's seat. The Mercedes coughed and protested, but obeyed long enough to limp into the shelter of the garage. As the engine died, this time possibly for good, Michael hit the switch to lower the bay door, shutting out the storm's fury. In the sudden quiet, the woman's labored breathing became audible as she stepped from the car, her right leg buckling slightly. She caught herself against the door, frustration flashing across her face before she masked it with a polite smile. I appreciate this. I know it's late. Engines don't check the clock before they decide to quit. Michael circled the Mercedes, noting its age, nearly 15 years old but meticulously maintained until recently. E320, good car. What happened? It started making a high-pitched noise about 20 miles back, then the dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. She held out her hand. Emma Parker. Michael Foster. His calloused palm met her smoother one briefly. Mind popping the hood. As Emma reached for the hood, release, her handbag slipped from her shoulder, spilling its contents across the concrete. She knelt awkwardly to gather her belongings, waving off Michael's offer to help with a shake of her head. I've got it. The words carried a weight beyond the scattered items, a declaration of independence that seemed practiced. Among the typical contents, wallet, phone keys, Michael noticed a bottle of prescription medication that Emma quickly pocketed and a folded newspaper with job listings circled in red. She missed a set of keys that had skittered beneath the car, and when she tried to bend further to reach them, she winced visibly. Allow me. Michael retrieved the keys, noticing they belonged to a different vehicle entirely. A key card with the Asclepius Medical logo, one of the largest medical technology companies in the Pacific Northwest. He handed them back without comment, filing away the information as Emma finally managed the hood release. The problem revealed itself immediately: a ruptured fuel pump and significant electrical damage. The repair would require parts that weren't in stock, specialized labor, and at least $2,000. Michael explained this with straightforward honesty, watching Emma's expression fall with each detail. Is there any way to make it operational temporarily, just enough to get me to Bellingham? Emma's fingers tightened around her purse strap. I have an interview tomorrow afternoon that I can't miss. Not safely, no. That fuel pump is completely shot and the electrical system is compromised. You'd risk a fire. Michael wiped his hands on his shop rag. I could order the parts, but they wouldn't arrive until at least Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. Emma stared at the damaged engine, calculations clearly running behind her eyes. I don't suppose there's a rental place still open. Not in this town, especially not at... Michael checked the wall clock, 8:30 on a Friday night. Perfect. The word emerged sharp with frustration as Emma pulled out her phone, checking the screen before shoving it back in her pocket. No rideshare service out here either, I'm guessing. Michael shook his head, taking in her increasingly desperate expression. He recognized that look. He'd seen it in his own mirror in the months after Sarah died, when the medical bills had piled up and the future had seemed to collapse into an impossible knot. There's a motel about half a mile down the road. Not fancy, but clean. You could stay there tonight, figure out transportation in the morning. Emma nodded, already calculating. And the repair costs? Parts and labor, probably around $2,000. Could go higher depending on what else we find once we get deeper into it. Something shifted in Emma's expression, a flicker of panic quickly masked by determination. I can manage it, just not all at once. Would you consider a payment plan? The question clearly cost her something in pride. Michael studied her more carefully. The Mercedes was old, but had been an expensive car in its day. Her clothes were quality, but showed wear. The prescription bottle, the job listings, the desperation about the interview. A picture began to form of someone whose circumstances had changed dramatically. Look, I'll be straight with you. Michael leaned against the workbench. I'm a one-man operation here. I can't carry accounts receivable for months. But I can do the work at cost if you can pay for the parts up front. That would cut it down to about $1,200. Emma met his gaze directly, something unreadable passing behind her eyes. I appreciate the offer, but I don't take charity. It's not charity, it's pragmatic. Michael gestured to the quiet garage. Business is slow. I'd rather have work at a smaller margin than no work at all. Emma hesitated, then glanced at the desk where Jason had finally stirred, rubbing his eyes as he took in the scene. Your son, Lun. When Michael nodded, she continued. I noticed the accounting ledgers on your desk. They're practically hieroglyphics. I could organize your bookkeeping system while you work on the car. A trade of services. Michael raised an eyebrow. You know bookkeeping. I know systems. Emma's response came quickly, confidently. Organizational efficiency was my specialty at... She stopped abruptly, then continued more carefully. At my previous position. Michael considered the offer. His financial records were indeed a disaster, a combination of handwritten receipts and haphazard computer entries he'd never had time to properly organize. The IRS audit 2 years ago had been a nightmare he'd barely survived. That might work, but the parts still need to be paid for up front. I can manage that much. Emma extended her hand again this time for a handshake that sealed their arrangement. Do we have a deal? The transaction felt more significant than a simple car repair agreement. Michael found himself wondering what circumstances had brought Emma Parker to his garage tonight, what series of events had led to this moment. There was a story there, one he suspected might be more complex than it appeared on the surface. Deal. His hand closed around hers calloused palm against smooth fingers. Their arrangement began the next morning after Michael drove Emma to the modest Pinecrest Motel and returned to find Jason full of questions about their unexpected visitor. The weekend passed in a rhythm that felt both strange and somehow familiar. Michael working on other customers' vehicles while waiting for the Mercedes parts to arrive. Emma setting up a makeshift workstation at his cluttered desk, transforming chaos into order with methodical precision. By Monday afternoon, Emma had created a digital booking system that automatically calculated labor costs, parts markup, and tax obligations. Michael watched in amazement as she demonstrated how a few clicks could generate reports he had previously spent hours compiling manually. Where did you learn all this? Michael asked, scrolling through the new system. Emma's shoulders tensed slightly. I've always been good with systems. She redirected the conversation to the Mercedes. Have the parts been shipped yet? Michael nodded, accepting her deflection. Should arrive tomorrow morning. I'll be able to start the repair right away. As the days passed, an unexpected comfort developed between them. Emma arrived each morning with coffee from the diner across the street, black for Michael, and something complicated with cinnamon for herself. She worked steadily through the garage's paperwork, occasionally answering the phone with a professional warmth that impressed even Mrs. Henderson, the town's most demanding customer. Jason took to Emma immediately, especially after discovering her knack for explaining his science homework in ways that made complex concepts suddenly clear. Michael found himself listening from beneath various cars as Emma broke down physics principles into practical examples that had Jason nodding with newfound understanding. So potential energy is just energy waiting to happen, Jason asked one afternoon, perched on a stool beside Emma's workspace. Exactly, like a roller coaster at the top of a hill. Emma grabbed a paperclip and bent it into a crude track shape. All that potential converts to kinetic energy on the way down. Energy can change forms, but it doesn't disappear. Like how Dad converts coffee into car repairs, Jason quipped, earning a laugh from both adults. Michael felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years, the simple joy of shared moments that had been missing since Sarah's death. He caught himself watching Em when she wasn't looking, the graceful efficiency of her movements, despite her leg, the intensity of her focus when solving a problem, the genuine smile that transformed her face when Jason mastered a difficult concept. On Thursday morning, Michael arrived at the garage to find Emma already there, poring over a mechanical engineering journal he kept on the break room shelf. She closed it quickly when she noticed him, but not before he glimpsed complex notations she'd made in the margins, calculations and modifications to a prosthetic limb design featured in the article. Light reading, Michael asked, setting down the box of donuts he'd brought. Emma shrugged, sliding the journal back onto the shelf. Just curious, the parts for my car arrived today, right? UPS should be here by noon. Michael poured himself coffee, studying her over the rim of his mug. You know, for someone waiting on a job interview, you seem to have a pretty solid grasp of engineering principles. I read widely. Emma's tone carried a finality that discouraged further questions, but the slight tightening of her shoulders told Michael he'd touched on something significant. The moment was interrupted by Jason bursting through the door, waving a paper excitedly. Dad, I got selected for the regional science competition. Mr. Larson said my project on aerodynamic efficiency was the best in the class. Michael caught his son in a one-armed hug, pride momentarily overshadowing his concern about the cost of supporting such an endeavor. That's fantastic, buddy. Tell me all about it. As Jason launched into an enthusiastic explanation, Michael noticed Emma watching them with an expression that combined joy and something that looked almost like longing. When she caught him looking, she quickly excused herself, mentioning something about checking inventory records. Later that afternoon, as Michael finally installed the new fuel pump in Emma's Mercedes, he heard a crash from the office area followed by a muffled curse. He hurried around the partition to find Emma on the floor, having apparently slipped while reaching for a file on the upper shelf. Her right leg was extended awkwardly, and her face was tight with pain. "Are you all right?" Michael moved to help her, but Emma held up a hand to stop him. "I'm fine. Just lost my balance." Despite her words, she struggled to stand, her right leg seemingly unable to bear weight. Michael ignored her protests, kneeling to offer support. "Here, let me help you to the chair at least." Emma finally relented, allowing him to guide her to the office chair. As she sat, Michael noticed the unnatural stiffness of her right leg and the wince she couldn't quite suppress as she tried to bend it. "That's more than just a temporary injury, isn't it?" Michael asked quietly, keeping his tone neutral. Emma's expression closed like a steel trap. "It's nothing I can't handle." "I didn't suggest otherwise." Michael pulled up a second chair sitting across from her. "But I'm guessing it's why you recognize the designs in that engineering journal." For a long moment, Emma said nothing, internal calculations playing across her face. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders dropping slightly. "3 years ago, I was in a car accident. A drunk driver hit me at an intersection. The impact crushed my right leg." She spoke clinically, as if describing someone else's experience. "The surgeons saved the leg, but the nerve damage was extensive. I've had 3 surgeries and 2 years of physical therapy." "I'm sorry." Michael kept his response simple, recognizing the effort it had taken for her to share even this much. "Don't be, I'm one of the lucky ones." Emma's voice hardened. "The doctors told me I'd never walk without assistance, that I should adjust my expectations about what my life could be." A flash of fierce determination crossed her face. "I've spent the last year proving them wrong." "Is that what's under your pant leg? Some kind of brace?" Michael asked, professional curiosity momentarily overriding social boundaries. Instead of taking offense, Emma seemed almost relieved by his technical interest rather than pity. She rolled up her pant leg to reveal a complex arrangement of metal and carbon fiber strapped to her calf and ankle, a crude but ingenious homemade assistive device. "I designed it myself. The commercial options were either too bulky, too weak, or absurdly expensive." Michael leaned closer, engineer's mind immediately analyzing the construction. "You built this yourself, with limited resources and a lot of trial and error." Emma allowed a hint of pride into her voice. "It helps distribute weight away from the damaged nerves and provides stability. Not pretty, but functional." Michael's fingers hovered over the device, professional assessment, overriding any awkwardness. "May I?" When Emma nodded, he examined the connections and pivot points. "This is impressive work, especially for someone without machine shop access. But the weight distribution is off. That's why you're still limping. And these connection points must be creating pressure sores." Emma's eyes widened, slightly surprised by his accurate assessment. "Yes to both. I've tried different configurations, but without proper materials or tools. The aluminum is too rigid here." Michael pointed to the ankle joint. "And this pivot point needs a better bearing assembly. You're getting metal fatigue at this stress point." Emma studied him with new interest. "You seem to know a lot about mechanical engineering for an auto mechanic." Michael smiled slightly, recognizing the probe for what it was. "Cars are just one application of the same principles. Before this," he gestured to the garage around them, "I designed landing gear systems for Boeing's commercial aircraft division. The weight distribution challenges aren't so different from what you're dealing with here." "Why did you leave aerospace for car repair?" Emma asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. The familiar weight of grief settled across Michael's shoulders. "My wife died 5 years ago. Cancer. Jason was only 5. The practiced explanation emerged without emotion, worn smooth by repetition. The medical bills piled up, and the 60-hour weeks at Boeing weren't compatible with being a single parent. I had to make a choice." "So you walked away from an engineering career to raise your son?" Emma's voice held no judgment, only quiet understanding. Michael shrugged. "Not much of a choice, really. Jason needed me present more than we needed the bigger paycheck." A comfortable silence settled between them, a moment of mutual recognition. Two lives diverted from their expected paths by circumstances beyond control. Michael found himself studying Emma's face, noting the intelligence in her eyes, and the determination etched around her mouth. There was more to her story than she was sharing, much more, but he respected the boundaries she'd established. The moment was broken by the UPS truck pulling into the garage lot, bringing the final parts for Emma's Mercedes. Michael excused himself to sign for the delivery, his mind already turning over a new problem that had nothing to do with car repairs. That night after Jason had gone to bed, Michael sat at his kitchen table surrounded by sketches and calculations. The image of Emma's crude leg brace remained sharp in his mind, ingenious in concept but flawed in execution. His engineer's brain automatically identified improvements, material substitutions, better load distribution mechanisms. Michael pulled out his old drafting tools he hadn't used since leaving Boeing. The familiar weight of the precision compass and the smooth glide of the ruler across paper awakened something that had been dormant for too long. He sketched a framework that would distribute weight more evenly, incorporating concepts from aircraft landing gear. Systems designed to absorb impact while maintaining stability under variable loads. By midnight, he had a preliminary design for a leg brace that would provide better support while reducing pressure on the damaged nerves. By 2 a.m., he had calculated material requirements and structural load capacities. By dawn, he had a parts list drawn from components he either had on hand or could salvage from the junkyard behind the garage. Jason found him asleep at the table, surrounded by calculations and coffee cups. "Dad, did you stay up all night?" His voice carried equal parts concern and fascination with the technical drawings spread across the surface. Michael straightened, wincing at the stiffness in his neck. "Got caught up in a project." He quickly gathered the papers, not ready to share his idea with anyone, not even Jason. "Better get ready for school, buddy. We're running late." At the garage that morning, Michael found himself watching Emma more carefully, noting the specific limitations of her movement, the angles at which her discomfort increased the compensatory adjustments she made throughout the day. Each observation refined the design, taking shape in his mind. As he worked to install the new electrical components in Emma's Mercedes, Michael found himself energized by a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. The car repair was straightforward, the kind of work he could do with his eyes closed after a decade in the business. But the challenge of creating an assistive device that could genuinely improve someone's mobility, that engaged parts of his brain that had been neglected for too long. By the end of the day, the Mercedes was nearly operational again. Michael closed the hood, satisfaction in his movements as he wiped his hands on a shop rag. "She'll be ready by tomorrow afternoon. Just need to run a final diagnostic in the morning to make sure the electrical system is stable." Emma nodded, relief evident in her expression. "I can't thank you enough, not just for the car, but for," she gestured to the newly organized office, the streamlined inventory system, the digital customer database she'd created. "The garage has never run this efficiently." Michael meant it sincerely. "You've saved me hundreds of hours of work." "Fair exchange, then." Emma gathered her things, preparing to return to the motel for what would likely be her final night in town. "I'll be here tomorrow to settle the bill and pick up the car." Michael hesitated in unexpected reluctance to see her leave, competing with his usual professional detachment. "Your interview in Bellingham, what kind of position is it?" "Systems management for a medical supply company." Emma's answer came too quickly, too practiced. "Nothing exciting, but it's a foot in the door." Michael nodded, not calling her on the obvious deflection. "Good luck with it, though they'd be lucky to have someone with your organizational skills." Emma paused at the door, something unspoken hovering between them. For a moment, Michael thought she might say more, might fill in some of the deliberate gaps in her story. Instead, she simply smiled. "Thank you, Michael, for everything." After she left, Michael turned back to the Mercedes, making a final inspection before closing up shop. In the passenger seat footwell, he spotted a glossy brochure that must have fallen from Emma's bag. He retrieved it, intending to set it aside for her to collect tomorrow, when the logo caught his attention. Asclepius Medical, the same emblem he'd seen on her keycard. The brochure detailed an innovative neural interface system for prosthetic limbs technology that allowed for more natural movement and sensation. The technical specifications were impressive, far beyond current market offerings. Michael was about to set it aside when he noticed a post-it note stuck to the back page bearing a handwritten note. "Emma, we need you back. The Hermes project is stalling without your leadership. Reynolds." Michael stared at the note pieces clicking into place. The key card, the advanced understanding of engineering principles, the evasiveness about her past employment, the medical journal notations, the custom brace design. His internet search that night confirmed his suspicions. Emma Parker was actually Emma Thornhill, former chief technical officer of Asclepius Medical, one of the leading medical technology companies in the country. A prodigy who had earned dual PhDs in biomedical engineering and computer science by age 27, she had led the development of revolutionary assistive devices before mysteriously disappearing from public view 3 years ago, right around the time of her accident. Articles described her as brilliant but demanding, intensely private, and pathologically dedicated to her work. Her innovations had transformed the prosthetics industry, making advanced technology available at lower price points than competitors. Then suddenly she had vanished from the corporate world without explanation. Michael closed his laptop, unsure what to do with this information. Confronting Emma felt invasive, but pretending ignorance seemed dishonest. More importantly, the revelation changed nothing about his developing project. If anything, it only confirmed his instinct that the crude brace she currently used was far beneath her capabilities, suggesting that her current circumstances had severely limited her access to resources. That night, Michael returned to his drafting table with renewed purpose. If Emma Thornhill, one of the most brilliant minds in medical technology, was reduced to constructing assistive devices from hardware store parts, something significant had disrupted her life. And while he couldn't fix whatever had caused her downfall, he could perhaps use his own engineering skills to create something that might genuinely help her. Working through the night, Michael refined his design, incorporating insights from both his aerospace background and the automotive systems he now worked with daily. By morning, he had a blueprint for a leg brace that would be lightweight, durable, and most importantly, effective at reducing the pain Emma clearly experienced but tried to hide. After dropping Jason at school, Michael drove to the scrapyard outside town, searching through discarded machinery for components he could repurpose. He found aircraft-grade aluminum from a small plane wreck, high-tension springs from an abandoned industrial press, and carbon fiber panels from a racing bike frame. Each piece was carefully selected for its mechanical properties rather than appearance, function dictating form in its purest expression. Back at the garage, Michael cleared a workbench in the rear away from customer vehicles. He set up his portable welding equipment and began fabricating the frame, losing himself in the precision work that had once defined his professional identity. The familiar focus of engineering, problem-solving enveloped him, hours passing unnoticed as the device took shape under his hands. He was so absorbed that he didn't hear the garage door open, didn't notice Emma's presence until she spoke from directly behind him. "What are you working on?" Michael started, nearly dropping the welding torch. He turned to find Emma standing there, her eyes fixed on the partially assembled brace on his workbench. Her expression cycled rapidly through confusion, recognition, and something more complex, a vulnerability quickly masked by professional assessment. "It's a prototype." Michael set down his tools, suddenly uncertain how to explain his presumptuous project. "For a better leg brace." Emma stepped closer, her engineer's eye already analyzing the structure. "This isn't for a car." "No." Michael straightened, meeting her gaze directly. "It's for you." Emma's breath caught her carefully maintained composure slipping momentarily. "Why would you?" "Because I can." Michael gestured to the brace. "The design you're using now is ingenious with limited resources, but it's causing more problems than it solves. This would distribute weight more effectively, reduce pressure on your damaged nerves, and allow for more natural movement." Emma's hand reached out almost unconsciously to touch the aluminum frame. Her fingers traced the contours with the reverence of someone who understood exactly what she was looking at. "You designed this from scratch, just from seeing my brace yesterday." Michael hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I know who you are, Emma, or should I say Dr. Thornhill." Emma's posture stiffened, her face closing like a shutter. "You looked me up. Your brochure fell out in the car. The note from Reynolds caught my attention." Michael kept his tone neutral, matter of fact. The internet filled in the rest. "And now you think you can impress the former CTO of Asclepius Medical with a homemade brace?" There was no malice in her question, only a genuine curiosity. Michael shook his head. "I think I can help someone who's clearly been through hell. The fact that you're a brilliant engineer just meant I had to bring my A game to the design." He gestured to the workbench. Boeing's loss is your gain, I suppose. Emma studied him for a long moment, as if recalculating some internal assessment. Then she moved to the workbench and began examining the brace components in detail, her trained eye identifying purposes and connections without needing explanation. Aircraft-grade aluminum, smart choice for the load-bearing sections. Her fingers traced the carbon fiber panels, and these would provide lateral stability without adding significant weight. That was the idea. Michael found himself holding his breath, awaiting her professional judgment. The spring assembly here, Emma pointed to the ankle joint. How would it handle variable resistance during different walking phases? Michael reached past her to demonstrate his arm, briefly brushing hers. The tension is adjustable. See this mechanism. It can be calibrated to provide more support during weight-bearing phases and less restriction during the swing phase of your gait. Emma nodded slowly, a professional appreciation dawning in her expression. You've incorporated biomechanical principles into what's essentially an aerospace approach to the problem. She looked up at him, reassessing. You really were wasted on car repairs. I wouldn't say wasted, Michael smiled slightly, just applied differently. A charged silence fell between them both, recognizing a connection that went beyond their temporary arrangement. The shared language of engineers, the mutual respect of problem solvers, and something less definable that neither seemed ready to acknowledge. Emma broke the moment first, her professional mask sliding back into place. My car is finished. Ready to go? Michael led her to the Mercedes, now purring with renewed health. New fuel pump installed, electrical system repaired and tested. She's running better than she probably has in years. Emma ran her hand along the car's roof, an oddly affectionate gesture for someone of her technical background. This car has been with me through a lot of changes. It's a good vehicle, solid engineering. Michael handed her the keys. Should serve you well for many more years, especially if you bring it in for regular maintenance. Emma's fingers closed around the keys, but she didn't move toward the driver's door. About the brace, she began. It's not ready yet. Michael cut her off gently. I need at least another day to finish the assembly and test the joint mechanisms. If you're willing to delay your departure, Emma seemed to weigh invisible options, internal calculations running behind her eyes. My interview isn't until Tuesday now. It was rescheduled. The hesitation suggested another deflection, but Michael didn't press. I could stay through the weekend. Perfect. I can have it ready for fitting by Sunday afternoon. Michael felt an unexpected surge of anticipation, not just for the engineering challenge, but for the extended time with Emma. As she settled her bill for the parts, exactly as agreed, no more, no less, Michael noticed a new tension in her movements, a hyper-awareness that hadn't been present before. Her discovered identity hung between them, neither fully acknowledged nor dismissed. Will you tell me the real story someday? Michael asked as he walked her to her car, the question emerging before he could reconsider. Emma paused, her hand on the door handle. Maybe. She met his eyes directly. But first, let's see if your brace actually works, aerospace engineer. The challenge in her voice carried no malice, only the respectful provocation of one technical mind to another. Michael nodded, accepting both the challenge and the boundary it established. Fair enough. See you tomorrow, Dr. Thornhill. Emma. Her correction came quickly. I haven't been Dr. Thornhill in a long time. As the Mercedes pulled away, Michael felt an unfamiliar lightness in his chest, the awakening of something he'd thought long dormant. He turned back to the garage, to the half-assembled brace waiting on his workbench, to the challenge that had reignited his engineer spirit. That evening, as Michael helped Jason with a science project, a wind tunnel constructed from cardboard and a salvaged computer fan, he found his thoughts repeatedly drifting to Emma. Not just to the technical challenge of her brace, but to the mystery of her circumstances. What could drive someone at the pinnacle of their field to disappear, to reinvent themselves as someone else? What had happened in the aftermath of her accident that had separated her from the resources and position she'd once commanded? Dad, you're not listening. Jason's voice broke through his thoughts. I said the airflow meter isn't working right. Sorry, buddy. Michael refocused on the project, adjusting the small anemometer they'd constructed. Try it now. As they worked, Michael considered how to explain Emma's extended presence to his son. Jason had clearly grown attached to her over the past week, flourishing under her technical explanations and genuine interest in his scientific curiosity. How would he react when she inevitably left? The question weighed on Michael as he tucked Jason into bed later that night. Emma's car is fixed, but she'll be staying in town a couple more days, he explained, adjusting the blanket around his son's shoulders. Because of the special brace you're making, Jason asked, surprising Michael with his awareness. You knew about that? Jason rolled his eyes with the particular disdain only preteens can master. Dad, I saw your drawings, and I'm not blind. Emma walks funny because her leg is hurt. It wasn't hard to figure out. Michael smiled, reminded once again that his son missed very little. Yes, I'm trying to help her walk more comfortably. Is she going to stay with us? The innocent question carried more weight than Jason likely intended. No, buddy, she has her own life to get back to. Michael kept his tone neutral, ignoring the unexpected pang that accompanied the statement. But she'll be around for a few more days at least. Jason nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. As Michael turned out the light, his son's voice came softly through the darkness. Dad, I like her. She explains things better than my teachers, and she makes you smile again. The simple observation lingered in Michael's mind as he returned to the kitchen table, and his brace designs a reminder that his son saw more clearly than he sometimes gave him credit for. The weekend unfolded in a new rhythm. Emma arrived at the garage early Saturday morning, carrying coffee and a bag of fresh bagels from the local bakery. She wore casual clothes for the first time since Michael had met her. Jeans and a simple blue sweater that somehow made her look both younger and more approachable. I thought you might appreciate breakfast, she offered, setting down the food. And I admit I'm curious to see your progress. Together they moved to the workbench where the brace lay partially assembled. Michael explained each component as he worked, finding in Emma not just a patient, but a collaborator whose insights improved the design in real time. Her suggestions for the joint mechanisms were elegant solutions he might have eventually reached himself, but her shortcuts saved hours of trial and error. Jason joined them, mid-morning homework completed, drawn by the technical conversation and the rare sight of his father fully engaged in engineering again. He watched wide-eyed as Emma sketched modifications to the ankle joint, explaining the biomechanics in terms the boy could understand. So it's like a shock absorber for a leg, Jason asked, peering at the spring mechanism. Exactly, Emma nodded approvingly. The human ankle naturally absorbs impact when we walk. This helps replace that function where the nerves are damaged. Michael caught Jason's eye over Emma's bent head, sharing a moment of mutual appreciation for her ability to simplify complex concepts. It struck him suddenly how natural this felt. The three of them working together, sharing ideas, building something meaningful. It was a glimpse of a different life, one where his engineering talents served more than just keeping old cars running. By Sunday afternoon, the brace was ready for testing. Michael had worked through the night to complete the final assembly, incorporating every refinement Emma had suggested. The result was far more sophisticated than his initial design, a testament to their collaborative effort. Emma stood in the garage's small bathroom, adjusting her clothing after strapping on the device. When she emerged, her gait was tentative, testing the brace's response to each careful step. Michael and Jason watched in silence, technical assessment temporarily overridden by the human significance of the moment. How does it feel? Michael asked, professional detachment failing to mask his investment in the answer. Emma took several more steps, her expression concentrated as she analyzed the sensations. Then she did something that surprised them both. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. It's remarkable. The pressure points are completely different, and the support during weight transfer. She took a longer stride than another, growing more confident with each step. It's not perfect, but it's so much better than what I had before. Michael released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. We can make adjustments. Fine-tune the tension here. He indicated the ankle joint, and possibly recalibrate the weight distribution. It's already a tremendous improvement. Emma walked a complete circuit of the garage, her limp noticeably reduced. As she returned to them, emotion briefly overcame her professional detachment. Michael, I don't know how to thank you for this. Just seeing it work is enough. The words emerged with complete honesty. Jason, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. Does this mean you won't need a special car anymore? Emma, you could drive anything now. The innocent question landed with unexpected weight. Emma's expression shifted, calculations clearly running behind her eyes. It certainly expands my options, Jason. Michael recognized the evasion for what it was, another piece of the puzzle that was Emma Thornhill's current circumstances. The Mercedes wasn't a necessity dictated by her physical limitations. It was a choice made for other reasons. As Emma continued testing the brace, growing more confident with each circuit of the garage, Michael found himself studying her with new questions. The brace was working better than he dared hope, their collaborative design proving effective beyond his initial expectations. But the larger mystery remained. Why was a woman of Emma's caliber, with her resources and connections, living in reduced circumstances and apparently hiding her identity? The answer emerged unexpectedly later that afternoon. Michael was making final adjustments to the brace while Emma sat on the workbench, her leg extended as he calibrated the spring tension. Jason had gone outside to test his wind tunnel in the natural breeze, leaving them in a companionable silence broken only by the occasional technical exchange. Emma's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen, her entire body tensing, as she declined the call without answering. Seconds later, it buzzed again with a text message. Whatever it contained caused her face to pale slightly. "Problem?" Michael asked, continuing his adjustments to give her space. Emma hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "That was Eamon Reynolds, CEO of Asclepius Medical, my former boss and business partner." Michael looked up, surprised by the voluntary disclosure. "The one who left you the note about the Hermes project?" "Yes." Emma's fingers tightened around her phone. "He's been trying to contact me for months. I've been avoiding the conversation." "Because of your accident?" Michael asked carefully, sensing they were approaching the core of her mystery. Emma was silent for a long moment, internal calculations playing across her face. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders dropping slightly. "The accident changed everything. Not just physically, but it made me reevaluate my priorities." Her voice grew distant, remembering. "I built Asclepius from the ground up with Eamon. 16-hour days, 7 days a week for almost a decade. The company consumed everything, my time, my relationships, my health. And then the accident happened." "Yes." Emma's gaze fixed on the leg brace, her expression complex. "Suddenly, I was the patient instead of the innovator. I experienced firsthand how inaccessible our technology was to average people. The devices we created, that I created, were priced beyond what insurance would cover, available only to the wealthy or the exceptionally well-insured." Understanding dawned. "So you left." "I stepped back initially just for recovery, but as weeks turned to months, I saw more clearly what we'd become, what I'd become. When Eamon pushed for faster development and higher price points on the Hermes project, I knew that I couldn't go back to that life." Emma's voice hardened. "So I disappeared, resigned via email, cut all ties, and started over as Emma Parker." Michael finished the calibration, sitting back to give her space. A simplified life, no teams to manage, no board meetings, no ethical compromises. Emma flexed her ankle, testing the adjusted tension. "Just me trying to rebuild something meaningful on a smaller scale." The garage door rattled suddenly as Jason burst back in excitement, overriding his usual careful entrance. "Dad, Emma, my wind tunnel works perfectly. The airflow is just like you said it would be," and he stopped abruptly, sensing the gravity of the conversation he'd interrupted. Emma recovered first, her professional mask sliding back into place as she smiled at Jason. "That's wonderful. We should document the results with proper measurements." As Jason eagerly set up his experiment for them to observe, Michael found himself watching Emma. The easy way she interacted with his son, the genuine interest she showed in his project, the natural place she seemed to have carved in their lives in just a week's time. Later, as the afternoon light began to fade, Emma prepared to leave the new brace, and allowing her to move with a confidence Michael hadn't seen before. At her car, she paused, something unresolved in her expression. "I'm not taking the interview in Bellingham," she admitted suddenly. "There is no interview. I've been consulting remotely, developing simplified versions of assistive devices that could be produced at lower cost points." Michael nodded, unsurprised by the confession. "I figured it was something like that. The Mercedes is ready whenever you want to leave." "That's just it." Emma met his gaze directly. "I'm not sure I want to leave. Not yet." The admission seemed to cost her something in pride or certainty. "What we did here with this brace, it's exactly the kind of work I've been trying to do on my own, but without the right resources or collaboration." Michael felt his pulse quicken slightly, possibilities opening that he hadn't allowed himself to consider. What are you suggesting? I don't know exactly. Emma's honesty was refreshing after days of careful evasion. But there's something here worth exploring further. Not just the brace, but the way we work together. Before Michael could respond, a sleek black SUV pulled into the garage lot, its tinted windows and polished finish instantly out of place in the modest surroundings. Emma tensed visibly as the driver's door opened and a tall man in an expensive suit emerged, his confident stride and assessing gaze marking him as someone accustomed to authority. Emma! The man's voice carried equal parts relief and exasperation. Do you have any idea how long we've been searching for you? Emma straightened the vulnerability of moments before replaced by a professional formality that transformed her bearing. Hello, Eamon. I see you finally tracked me down. Michael stood quietly at Emma's side, witnessing the collision of her two worlds, the simplified existence she'd chosen and the corporate life that had come to reclaim her. Whatever happened next would determine not just the fate of their fledgling connection, but possibly the direction of both their futures. As Eamon Reynolds approached, his gaze swept over the modest garage, the half-assembled projects on the workbenches, and finally settled on Michael with an assessing calculation that missed nothing. The tension in the air crystallized into something tangible, a moment balanced between past and future, between what had been lost and what might yet be found. Eamon Reynolds stood like an exclamation point against the faded backdrop of Foster Auto, his tailored suit collecting none of the dust that seemed to coat everything else in the small garage. His gaze moved from Emma to Michael and back again, cataloging details with the efficiency of someone who had built a fortune on observation and analysis. 3 months of silence, Emma. The board is in an uproar. Eamon's voice carried the practiced calm of a man accustomed to crises, though the tightness around his eyes betrayed genuine concern. We've had to delay the Hermes project twice. The investors are threatening to pull out. Emma's posture shifted subtly, her shoulders squaring as she unconsciously adopted the stance of an executive rather than a customer in a repair shop. The company survived before me, Eamon. It will survive without me. Will it? Eamon's attention dropped to Emma's leg, noticing the new brace partially visible beneath her pant leg. Is that? His trained eye assessed the device with professional interest, calculations visibly running behind his expression. That's not one of our designs. Michael stepped forward, professional pride overriding his instinct to remain silent. Custom design, lightweight aluminum frame with carbon fiber support panels, fully adjustable tension system to accommodate variable walking conditions. Eamon's eyebrows rose slightly, reassessing Michael with new interest. You built this here. The question carried equal parts disbelief and professional curiosity. We built it together. Emma's correction came quickly, her hand moving unconsciously to touch the frame beneath her clothing. Michael provided the engineering foundation. I contributed biomechanical refinements. Something shifted in Eamon's expression, surprise giving way to calculation. Interesting. He extended his hand toward Michael. Eamon Reynolds, CEO of Asclepius Medical. Michael Foster. The handshake was brief but assessing on both sides. And I'm just a mechanic who remembers his engineering training. A mechanic. Eamon repeated the word with deliberate emphasis, his gaze taking in the modest garage. With aerospace engineering experience, judging by those joint mechanisms. He turned back to Emma, his expression softening. The board meeting is tomorrow morning, Emma. They're voting on whether to continue the Hermes project without you or shelve it entirely. Emma's face remained impassive, but Michael noticed her fingers tighten around the edge of her jacket, the only visible sign of internal conflict. You know my position, Eamon. The project's direction was wrong. Then come back and fix it. Eamon spread his hands in a gesture of pragmatic appeal. You built Asclepius to create solutions for people who need them. That mission hasn't changed. The price bots changed. The accessibility changed. Emma's voice hardened with conviction. We founded Asclepius to democratize medical technology, not create luxury items for the privileged few. The garage fell silent as the two executives faced off, years of shared history and diverging values hanging in the air between them. Michael stepped back, conscious of witnessing something both personal and professionally significant. He caught sight of Jason watching from the office doorway, eyes wide with curiosity about the stranger in the expensive suit. Eamon finally broke the silence with a calculated pivot. This brace, it's impressive work, especially given the limited resources. He gestured to the workbench cluttered with salvaged parts. How does it compare to our commercial models? Favorably. Emma's response came with the confidence of someone who had run the calculations. It lacks the neural interface capabilities of the Hermes prototype, but it's lighter, more adjustable, and could be manufactured for less than a fifth of the cost. Interest sharpened Eamon's gaze as he studied the brace more carefully. May I? When Emma nodded, he knelt to examine the mechanic's professional assessment, temporarily overriding corporate concerns. The load distribution is ingenious, and these pivot points, he looked up at Michael. Boeing, I'm guessing, landing gear systems. Michael nodded, surprised by the accurate assessment. 7 years in their commercial division. And now you fix cars in the middle of nowhere. Eamon's observation carried no judgment, only analytical interest. What caused that particular career trajectory? Before Michael could answer, Jason stepped forward from his observation point, protective instinct overriding his usual shyness around strangers. My mom died. Dad needed to be home more for me. The simple explanation hung in the air, unadorned and powerful in its directness. Eamon's expression shifted, something in the boy's forthright explanation, reaching past his corporate armor. He straightened, nodding with unexpected understanding. A worthy priority adjustment. He turned back to Emma, decision made. I need you at that board meeting, Emma, but I'd like you both to come. He gestured to include Michael. Bring the brace. Let's show the board what's possible when we return to our founding principles. Emma's eyes widened in surprise. You want to present an unaffiliated prototype to the board, one made in an auto garage. I want to remind them what Asclepius was founded to do. Eamon checked his watch with the unconscious gesture of someone perpetually aware of time's value. The corporate jet is waiting at the regional airport. We could be in Seattle by dinner. The sudden opportunity hung in the air like a suspended moment, a potential pivot point for all three lives. Michael found himself calculating not the engineering variables he'd been immersed in all weekend, but the human equations, Jason's school schedule, the garage's pending repairs, the uncharted territory that lay beyond a professional collaboration with Emma. Emma turned to Michael, unexpected vulnerability breaking through her executive composure. This is sudden. You have responsibilities here. Your son. Jason stepped closer to his father, a mixture of concern and excitement animating his features. Is this about the science stuff you've been building? Are you going to make more leg braces for people? The innocent question crystallized the decision for Michael. Possibly, but it would just be a quick trip to Saddle. A meeting. He looked to Emma. The unspoken question clear in his expression. Was this opportunity genuine or corporate manipulation? Emma's subtle nod provided his answer. Eamon may be many things, but he's sincere about the company's mission. Always has been. Decision made. Michael turned to practical concerns. I'd need to arrange for Jason. School tomorrow and, Dad, I could stay with Mrs. Rivera. She's always offering and her son has that new PlayStation. Jason's eagerness betrayed both his desire for his father to pursue this opportunity and the universal appeal of video games to 10-year-old boys. Eamon's eyes crinkled with genuine amusement. The meeting's at 10. You'd be back by tomorrow night if that helps your decision. He handed Michael a business card with a private number scrawled on the back. The plane leaves in 90 minutes. I hope to see you both there. With a final assessing look at the brace, he departed as efficiently as he had arrived, the black SUV purring out of the gravel lot. Left in the sudden quiet, Michael and Emma faced each other across a transformed landscape of possibilities. The week that had begun with a broken-down Mercedes had somehow culminated in an invitation to present their collaborative work to one of the country's leading medical technology companies. Emma broke the silence first, her expression troubled. You don't have to do this. It's not your fight, and corporate politics at Asclepius can be intense. Michael considered her words, running his hand absently over the tools on his workbench. For 5 years, I've been fixing engines and transmissions. Important work, but he glanced toward the brace they'd created together. This past weekend reminded me of something I'd forgotten, what it feels like to build something that truly matters. Emma studied him with new awareness, as if seeing beyond the mechanic's exterior to the engineer who had found a temporary detour rather than a permanent destination. And if it leads to something more, a longer-term project, consulting work? The question carried weight beyond professional possibilities, a tentative probe into territory neither had openly acknowledged. Michael met her gaze directly, decision already crystallizing. I think it's worth finding out. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Michael called Mrs. Rivera, who eagerly agreed to watch Jason for the night, her warmth and reliability a cornerstone of the informal support network that had helped him navigate single parenthood. Jason packed an overnight bag with the efficiency of a child accustomed to adaptation, his excitement about both the PlayStation and his father's important invention meeting evident in his rapid-fire questions. Emma made her own preparations, disappearing briefly to the motel to collect her belongings. When she returned, Michael noticed subtle changes in her presentation. Her hair neatly styled, her casual clothes replaced by a simple but elegant outfit that struck a deliberate balance between corporate polish and accessible authenticity. At the regional airport, the Asclepius corporate jet waited on the tarmac, its sleek form incongruous against the backdrop of rural Washington state. Michael hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, the symbolic threshold between his current life and the world he'd left behind when Sarah died. Jason's backpack weighed against his shoulder, a physical reminder of his most important responsibility. Emma paused beside him, reading his hesitation with intuitive accuracy. Having second thoughts, Michael adjusted the carrying case containing their prototype, its weight reassuringly tangible against the abstract uncertainties ahead. Just remembering the last time I was on a corporate jet, different company, different life. Emma nodded, understanding in her expression. We're just going to a meeting, Michael. Nothing has to change unless you want it to. The flight to Seattle took less than an hour, but it transported them far more than mere physical distance. Eamon used the time efficiently, briefing them on the current state of Asclepius Medical, while simultaneously assessing their prototype with professional interest. He asked targeted questions that revealed both his business acumen and genuine technical expertise, a combination that explained his success in the medical technology field. The board has gotten cautious, risk-averse. Eamon's explanation carried the frustrated undertone of someone pushing against institutional inertia. They're focusing on high-margin products for the top-tier market instead of broader accessibility. Emma nodded, unsurprised. Exactly why I left. The Hermes project was meant to create neural interface prosthetics that insurance companies could actually cover. Now it's being positioned as a luxury product. Eamon's attention shifted to Michael. That's where your background might be particularly valuable. Commercial aircraft manufacturers solved similar challenges decades ago: how to create sophisticated engineering solutions at scale with reliable safety margins. The conversation continued as the jet descended towards Seattle, the familiar skyline emerging from the clouds. For Michael, the view brought conflicting emotions. Memories of his previous life at Boeing, layered with the more recent associations of Sarah's final months in the city's medical centers. A car waited on the tarmac, whisking them directly to Asclepius headquarters in the city's bustling tech corridor. The glass and steel building rose 20 stories, its modern architecture making Foster Auto seem like a relic from another century. Michael absorbed the contrast without comment, focusing instead on the practical details of tomorrow's presentation. Eamon had arranged adjoining hotel suites in a luxury downtown property that made Michael acutely conscious of his worn jeans and flannel shirt. Emma seemed to sense his discomfort, her light touch on his arm, offering silent reassurance as they checked in. There's a technical workshop on the 4th floor, Eamon informed them as they rode the elevator. Fully equipped. I've arranged for you to have access tonight if you want to refine your prototype before the meeting. The suite Eamon had arranged for Michael was larger than his entire house, its understated luxury a sharp contrast to his modest rural existence. After the CEO departed with promises of car service in the morning, Michael found himself standing at the panoramic window, Seattle's lights spreading below like scattered stars. A soft knock at the connecting door pulled him from his thoughts. Emma entered at his acknowledgement, having changed into more casual clothes that reminded him of the woman who had spent the week in his garage, rather than the corporate executive who had once commanded boardrooms. Overwhelming, isn't it? Her gesture encompassed the luxurious suite, the city view, the sudden transition from rural mechanic to potential corporate partner. Coming back after stepping away, Michael nodded, grateful for her perception. Like visiting a foreign country where you used to be a citizen. He turned from the window, refocusing on their purpose. Should we head down to this workshop? Make sure everything's ready for tomorrow. The technical workshop proved to be a fabricator's dream cutting-edge equipment arranged with thoughtful efficiency materials and tools that would have cost more than Foster Auto's annual revenue. Michael ran his hand over a precision lathe appreciation for fine engineering, temporarily overriding his unease with the corporate environment. This brings back memories. Emma's voice carried a complex mixture of nostalgia and reservation as she surveyed her former professional domain. I practically lived in this room during the early development phases of our first product line. Together, they unpacked their prototype, assessing it with newly critical eyes in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the professional workshop. What had seemed innovative in a rural garage now revealed its limitations. The hand-finished joints, the salvaged components, the necessary compromises of creating sophisticated technology with limited resources. It needs refinement. Michael reached for a precision tool instinct overriding self-consciousness. The ankle pivot point could be smoother. And this connection here, he indicated a junction where two materials met. We can create a better transition with the equipment here. Emma nodded, already reaching for components from the meticulously organized supply wall. The calibration system could be more precise too. I was thinking about a micro-adjustment mechanism here. Her finger traced the potential modification with the confidence of someone back in their element. They fell into a focused rhythm, the collaborative flow they'd established in the garage transferring seamlessly to this more sophisticated environment. Hours passed unnoticed as they refined the prototype, each bringing complementary skills to the process. Michael's aerospace background provided structural insights, while Emma's biomechanical expertise guided the human interface elements. At some point, a technician appeared with coffee and sandwiches, quietly placed them on a side table, and departed without interrupting their work. Michael registered the corporate courtesy with a distant appreciation, his attention absorbed by a particularly challenging calibration problem. Try a titanium insert here. Emma handed him a small component from a nearby drawer. It's what we used for the joint connections in the Hermes early prototypes. Lighter than steel, but stronger than the aluminum you're using. Michael made the adjustment, testing the movement with satisfied approval. Perfect. That eliminates the friction point completely. He sat back, stretching muscles stiff from hours of focused work. It's after midnight. We should probably get some rest before the board meeting. Emma nodded, though her attention remained on the prototype, making minute adjustments that only her experienced eye would notice. Just a few more calibrations. Michael recognized the perfectionistic focus that had likely contributed to both her professional success and personal burnout. Emma, he waited until she looked up. It's ready, and so are you. Something in his steady confidence seemed to reach her. Emma set down her tools, her shoulders relaxing slightly as she stepped back from the workbench. You're right. Let's call it a night. In the elevator riding back to their floor, Emma's professional composure slipped momentarily. What if they don't see it, the potential for making this accessible rather than exclusive? The question revealed a vulnerability beneath her capable exterior. Michael considered her words, understanding the deeper concern. Then we take our prototype and find partners who do. The simplicity of his response carried a certainty born from years of practical problem solving. Good engineering with a clear purpose always finds its path forward. Back in his suite, Michael called to check on Jason, smiling at his son's enthusiastic report about the Rivera family's dinner and the new video game he'd mastered. After extracting a promise about homework completion, he ended the call with their usual exchange. Love you, buddy. Love you too, Dad. The familiar words anchored him amid the disorienting luxury of his temporary surroundings. Sleep came fitfully, his mind cycling through potential scenarios for tomorrow's presentation. The stakes felt surprisingly high for what had begun as a weekend project, not just for Emma's professional future, but for his own unexpected re-engagement with the engineering world he'd left behind. Morning arrived with Seattle's characteristic gray light filtering through the windows. Michael dressed in his best clothes, which still marked him clearly as an outsider in the corporate environment, and met Emma in the hotel lobby. She had transformed overnight into the executive she had once been, her simple but elegant business attire projecting confident professionalism. You clean up nicely, mechanic. Her teasing assessment carried warmth beneath the professional exterior. Michael tugged self-consciously at his collar, the tie feeling like a foreign object after years of t-shirts and flannel. Found this in the back of my suitcase. Last wore it to a funeral 3 years ago. Emma's expression softened with understanding. For what it's worth, you don't need the corporate uniform to impress these people. Your work speaks for itself. She gestured to the case containing their prototype. Ready to shake up the medical device industry. The car Eamon had arranged delivered them to Asclepius headquarters with 30 minutes to spare before the board meeting. In the soaring glass lobby, Emma paused, visible memories washing over her as she surveyed what had once been the center of her professional universe. A young receptionist approached with nervous energy. "Dr. Thornhill, it's really you. Everyone's been talking about your return." Her enthusiasm suggested Emma's reputation within the company transcended her official absence. Emma smiled with practiced ease that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just visiting Melissa. Is Eamon already upstairs?" "Yes, ma'am. He asked me to bring you to the executive conference room when you arrived." Melissa glanced curiously at Michael but maintained professional discretion by not asking for an introduction. As they rode the elevator to the top floor, Michael observed the subtle shift in Emma's demeanor, the slight squaring of her shoulders, the lifted chin, the focused gaze of someone preparing for battle. The executive persona settled over her like armor, necessary protection for the challenge ahead. The executive conference room occupied the building's northwest corner, floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing panoramic views of Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains beyond. Around a massive table of polished walnut sat 12 men and women in business attire that radiated wealth and influence. Their conversations stopped abruptly as Emma entered, their expressions ranging from surprise to calculation to genuine pleasure. Eamon rose from his position at the head of the table. "Ladies and gentlemen, as promised, Dr. Emma Thornhill has graciously agreed to join our discussion today." He gestured Michael forward. "And this is Michael Foster, an aerospace engineer who has been collaborating with Emma on an innovative mobility assistance device." Michael noted the careful phrasing. Eamon had introduced him by his previous professional identity rather than his current occupation, a strategic choice that established credibility with the assembled executives. A silver-haired woman in her 60s leaned forward, her assessing gaze moving between Emma and Michael. "This is highly irregular, Eamon. We agreed to discuss the future of the Hermes project today, not evaluate unsolicited prototypes." "With respect, Victoria, that's exactly what we're doing." Eamon's response came with practiced diplomatic smoothness. "The future of Hermes depends on whether we remain true to the founding vision of Asclepius or continue the current trajectory toward luxury medical products." The room tensed with unstated conflict, corporate politics radiating beneath the polished surface of professional courtesy. Michael remained silent, recognizing that this initial skirmish needed to play out before their technical presentation would have any impact. Emma stepped forward, reclaiming the corporate battlefield with practiced ease. "I understand your concerns, Victoria. I left abruptly and without adequate transition planning. That was unfair to all of you." Her acknowledgement visibly disarmed several board members in a adroit tactical move that Michael noted with admiration. Victoria's expression remained skeptical but less hostile. "Yet here you are with an unaffiliated prototype and an outside engineer expecting to influence the company's strategic direction." "Not influence, remind." Emma placed their case on the conference table, her movements deliberate and confident. Asclepius was founded on the principle that advanced medical technology should be accessible to all patients, not just the privileged few. The Hermes project was meant to embody that mission. A younger board member with the hungry look of a recent MBA leaned forward. "The reality, Dr. Thornhill, is that development costs for neural interface technology require premium pricing strategies. The market analysis is quite clear." "Is it?" Emma opened the case, revealing their refined prototype. "This mobility assistance device contains no neural interface components, yet it provides 80% of the functional benefit at less than 20% of the manufacturing cost." The presentation that followed demonstrated Emma's gifts as both technical innovator and strategic communicator. She outlined their design philosophy, the engineering principles borrowed from aerospace applications, and the potential manufacturing pathway that could make such devices widely available at insurance-compatible price points. Michael contributed technical specifics when asked, but primarily observed Emma in her element, the passionate advocate for accessible innovation, who had clearly inspired loyalty among many in the room. Even Victoria's skepticism visibly softened as the presentation progressed her shrewd assessment, recognizing genuine merit beneath the unconventional delivery. Questions followed ranging from manufacturing scalability to regulatory approval pathways. Michael found himself drawn into detailed technical discussions with several board members who had engineering backgrounds, their initial condescension giving way to professional respect as they recognized his expertise despite his current occupation. The momentum seemed to be building in their favor when the young MBA interrupted with calculated precision. This is all very impressive as a concept exercise, but it fundamentally misunderstands our current market position. The premium segment is where our growth potential lies. He slid a folder toward Emma. Our latest market analysis shows negligible revenue potential in the mass market segment you're proposing. Emma opened the folder, scanning its contents with increasing disbelief. This analysis assumes a price point double what we originally projected for Hermes. Of course, the accessible market vanishes at that level. She looked up at Eamon. When was this projection created? Eamon frowned, taking the document and examining its date. 2 months ago, after your departure. His expression darkened as he continued reading. And it explicitly excludes the insurance-compatible market we had originally targeted. The young executive shifted uncomfortably under Eamon's scrutiny. The board requested comprehensive analysis of our highest margin opportunities. We delivered that analysis by artificially constraining the parameters. Emma's voice remained calm, but her eyes had hardened. You created a self-fulfilling prophecy by excluding the very market segment the project was designed to serve. Victoria leaned forward, professional interest overriding corporate politics. Is this accurate, Mr. Reynolds? It appears so. Eamon's response carried the tight control of someone containing significant anger. The analysis systematically excluded the market segments that aligned with our founding mission. The room fell silent as the implications settled. Michael watched the board members exchange glances, corporate calculations visibly shifting behind professional masks. He recognized the pivotal moment when technical innovation intersected with business strategy and human values, creating a decision point that would determine the company's trajectory. Emma broke the silence with quiet intensity. This is exactly why I left. The mission of making transformative medical technology accessible was being systematically undermined. She gestured to their prototype. This device represents what's possible when we prioritize innovative engineering over profit maximization. It's not just a mobility aid, it's a philosophy made physical. The simple eloquence of her statement resonated in the hushed conference room. Michael found himself studying the board members' reactions, reading the subtle shifts that suggested Emma's words had found purchase in at least some of their calculations. Victoria was the first to respond, her measured tone carrying the weight of senior authority. We should reconsider the market analysis with accurate parameters. She fixed the young MBA with a stern look. All parameters including insurance-compatible price points in wide distribution models. Eamon seized the opening with practiced skill. I propose we establish a skunk works team to develop this alternative approach in parallel with the current Hermes pathway. Small budget, minimal overhead, maximum innovation freedom. His gaze shifted to Emma, with Dr. Thornhill leading the technical development, of course. Emma's surprise was visible only to those watching closely, a slight widening of her eyes, a momentary hesitation before her professional mask resettled. That would depend entirely on the team's autonomy and the company's genuine commitment to accessible price points, and on finding the right engineering talent. Eamon turned deliberately toward Michael. Mr. Foster's aerospace background provides precisely the structural innovation approach this project requires. The implication hung in the air, an opportunity for Michael to return to the engineering world he'd left behind, but on very different terms than his previous corporate existence. He felt the weight of multiple gazes assessing his potential value to their enterprise. I have a garage to run. Michael's response came without calculation, simple truth rather than negotiating tactic. And a son who needs stability. I can't simply abandon those responsibilities for a corporate project, however worthwhile. Emma's expression shifted subtly, respect mingling with something less definable. Perhaps a consulting arrangement, remote collaboration with periodic in-person sessions. The conversation pivoted to practical details, budget allocations, reporting structures, development timelines. Michael observed the transition with professional interest overlaid with personal caution. The corporate world unfolding its tentacles to reclaim Emma while simultaneously extending an invitation to him, complex human equations far more challenging than the engineering problems they'd solve together. The meeting concluded with provisional approval for the Skunk Works project pending detailed proposal development. As the board members filed out, several stopped to examine the prototype more closely, professional curiosity temporarily overriding corporate politics. Victoria lingered longest, her assessing gaze moving between the device and its creators. This reminds me of Asclepius in the early days. Her observation carried no sentimentality, only pragmatic assessment, before quarterly projections began driving innovation rather than the other way around. She nodded to Emma. "Welcome back, Dr. Thornhill, temporarily or otherwise." With a final appraising glance at Michael, she departed, leaving them alone with Eamon in the emptied conference room. That went better than expected. Eamon's understated assessment carried genuine satisfaction beneath the professional reserve. Victoria rarely endorses anything that wasn't her idea first. Emma began carefully repacking their prototype, her movements precise despite the emotional complexity of the past 2 hours. She endorses good engineering and sound business strategy. Always has. She secured the case latches with a decisive click. "But this isn't me coming back, Eamon, not in the traditional sense." Eamon nodded acceptance rather than surprise in his expression. "The company needs your innovation vision, Emma, not necessarily your physical presence in this building." He turned to Michael. "And your contribution today was invaluable. The aerospace perspective cut through technical objections that might have derailed the entire proposal." Michael acknowledged the compliment with a nod, his thoughts already turning to practical concerns, the garage customers waiting for repairs. Jason's science project due next week, the mortgage payment coming due. The corporate opportunity unfolding before him existed in a parallel universe to these daily realities. Think about the consulting role. Eamon handed Michael a business card, this one embossed with the company's logo, rather than hastily scribbled with a private number. "We can structure it around your existing responsibilities." As they departed the Asclepius building, Emma's professional armor gradually receded, the tension in her shoulders easing with each step away from her former corporate domain. By the time they reached the hotel to collect their belongings, she had visibly returned to the person who had spent a week collaborating in Michael's garage rather than commanding a corporate boardroom. "Well," she sat on the edge of a hotel armchair, suddenly looking tired beneath the professional polish. "That was intense." Michael nodded, loosening the constricting tie with relief. "Corporate politics makes engine repairs seem refreshingly straightforward." A smile ghosted across Emma's face. "At least with engines, the problems have definitive solutions." She leaned back, studying him with thoughtful assessment. "What are you thinking about Eamon's offer?" Michael considered the question, weighing complex variables beyond simple career calculations. "I'm thinking about Jason, about the garage, about what it means to build something that matters." He met her gaze directly. "And I'm thinking this doesn't have to be an either-or decision." Emma's expression shifted, understanding dawning. "A hybrid approach, maintaining your current life while exploring this new direction." "Exactly." Michael's certainty solidified as he articulated the path forward. "I left engineering once because the corporate structure was incompatible with what mattered most. I won't make that mistake again in either direction." The return flight to the regional airport near Michael's town carried a different energy than their journey to Seattle. Less tension, more thoughtful assessment of possibilities. Eamon had arranged for Emma's Mercedes to be delivered to the airport, the practical consideration indicating his serious interest in their ongoing collaboration. As they drove back toward Foster Auto in companionable silence, Michael found himself studying Emma's profile, noting how she seemed to relax further with each mile that separated them from Asclepius headquarters. A question that had been forming since the board meeting finally crystallized into words. "What happens next for you? Return to your consulting work. Back to Asclepius in this new capacity." Emma's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel, the only visible sign of the weighty decision confronting her. "I don't know yet. The Skunk Works project is compelling, exactly the kind of work I'd hoped to do when we founded the company." She glanced briefly at Michael before returning her attention to the road. "But there are other factors to consider now." The unspoken acknowledgement of their evolving connection hung between them, professional collaboration layered with personal possibility, both still undefined. Michael let the statement stand without pressing for clarification, respecting the complexity of her position. They arrived at Foster Auto in the golden light of late afternoon, the modest garage a stark contrast to the corporate opulence they'd left behind in Seattle. Jason was already there, having been dropped off by Mrs. Rivera after school. He bounded across the gravel lot, excitement evident in every movement. "Dad, how was the meeting? Did they like your invention? Are you going to make more of them?" The rapid-fire questions tumbled out as he hugged his father, then turned to include Emma in his enthusiastic greeting. Michael ruffled his son's hair, the simple gesture, centering him after the complexities of the corporate world. They were interested. We're still figuring out the details. Jason's perceptive gaze moved between the adults, reading more than they had explicitly stated. But it's good, right? They want to help people with the leg brace. Emma knelt slightly to meet Jason at eye level, her expression softening into genuine warmth. That's exactly what we're working toward, helping more people who need it. The moment was interrupted by the rumble of an approaching vehicle, a sleek Porsche that seemed as out of place in the rural setting as Eamon's SUV had been the previous day. It pulled to a stop beside Emma's Mercedes, dust settling around its polished finish as the driver's door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s, her corporate attire and confident bearing, marking her as another visitor from Emma's world rather than Michael's. Emma straightened surprise and wariness, crossing her features. "Diane?" The name emerged as a question rather than a greeting. The woman approached with measured steps, professional assessment in her gaze as it moved from Emma to Michael to Jason, cataloging details with practiced efficiency. "Hello, Emma. It's been a while." She extended her hand to Michael. "Diane Mercer, Chief Legal Officer for Asclepius Medical." The corporate title sent a ripple of tension through the previously relaxed atmosphere. Michael accepted the handshake while instinctively moving closer to Jason, protective instinct triggered by the unexpected intrusion of corporate authority. "Eamon sent you." Emma's statement carried no question, only resigned understanding. Diane's smile held professional warmth without reaching her calculating eyes. "The board was impressed with your presentation this morning. They've fast-tracked approval for the Skunk Works project." She reached into her briefcase, extracting a folder of documents. "But there are some contractual matters we need to address immediately. Intellectual property considerations primarily." The legal implications crystallized in Michael's mind with sudden clarity. Their weekend collaboration had created something of potential value developed outside corporate structures, but now being drawn into its sphere. The prototype represented not just technical innovation, but potential revenue streams, patent applications, and ownership rights. Emma's expression hardened into the executive mask he had observed in Seattle protective armor against corporate maneuvering. Any IP discussion should include Michael as equal partner in the development. Diane's assessment of Michael sharpened, reevaluating his significance in the equation. "Of course, that's precisely why I'm here." She gestured toward the garage office. "Perhaps we could discuss the details inside. The proposed terms are quite favorable for both of you." As they moved toward the office, Michael found himself at another crossroads, one where engineering passion intersected with corporate opportunity, where his quiet life confronted the possibility of significant change, where the weekend project born from simple human compassion now carried complex implications for his future and his son's. Jason followed his young face, serious with awareness beyond his years. He tugged at Michael's sleeve, voice lowered but audible in the quiet garage. "Dad, is this good or bad?" Michael considered his son's question, its simplicity, cutting through the complicated adult calculations swirling around them. The answer would determine not just a business decision, but a life direction for both of them. Michael studied the leather folder Diane had placed on his cluttered desk, its embossed Asclepius logo gleaming under the fluorescent garage lights. The contrast between the premium corporate stationery and the grease-stained surroundings struck him as symbolic of the choice now confronting him, two worlds colliding, demanding resolution. These contracts would secure your intellectual property rights while establishing a formal consulting relationship with Asclepius. Diane's manicured finger tapped a tabbed section of the dense legal document. "You'd retain partial ownership of the patent while licensing manufacturing rights to the company. The compensation package is on page 12. Michael flipped to the indicated page, momentarily startled by the number of zeros in the proposed consulting fee. The sum represented more than Foster Auto generated in 3 years. Beside him, Emma leaned forward, her trained executive eye scanning the fine print with practiced efficiency. The exclusivity clause is problematic. Emma's observation carried no accusation, merely analytical precision. This would prevent Michael from developing similar assistive technologies with any other partner, regardless of application. Diane inclined her head in acknowledgement. Standard protection for the company's investment in new technology. We're offering significant resources to develop your prototype. Jason remained uncharacteristically quiet, his young face serious as he absorbed the tension in the room. His gaze moved between the adults, reading currents beyond the specific words being exchanged. Michael caught his son's eye, offering a reassuring nod that did nothing to dispel the uncertainty hanging in the garage office. I'd need time to review this properly. Michael closed the folder, instinct warning against hasty decisions, and probably consult with my own attorney. A flicker of respect crossed Diane's face at his caution. Of course, Eamon anticipated your due diligence. She extracted a business card from a slim case. My direct line. I'm authorized to negotiate terms that work for everyone. The careful phrasing revealed volumes about Eamon's genuine interest in securing their collaboration. Michael accepted the card, noting the heavy stock and embossed details, small signifiers of corporate power and resources that his small garage couldn't begin to match. What's the timeline for decision? Michael's question addressed the practical consideration that Diane had deliberately left unstated. The board meets again next Friday to finalize the Skunkworks budget allocation. Diane gathered her briefcase, professional efficiency in every movement. Eamon would appreciate your answer by Thursday. Emma walked Diane to her car, their conversation pitched too low for Michael to hear. He remained at his desk, one hand resting on the contract folder, the other absently adjusting a paperweight Jason had made from an old piston head symbol of his current life, balanced against the potential future contained in the legal documents. Dad, Jason's quiet question broke through his thoughts. Are we moving to Seattle? The directness of the question crystallized Michael's swirling concerns into a single human focus. He turned his chair to face his son fully. No, buddy, not unless you wanted to. This would be part-time work I could mostly do from here. Relief softened Jason's expression, followed immediately by thoughtful consideration beyond his years. But it's important work, right? Helping people walk better. It could be. Michael's honest assessment acknowledged both potential and uncertainty. The leg brace we designed might help a lot of people if it gets manufactured properly. Jason nodded, absorbing this with the seriousness of a child learning to evaluate complex adult decisions. Mom would think that was cool, using your airplane engineering to help people walk. The simple observation struck Michael with unexpected force, the truth of it resonating deeper than all the corporate negotiations and financial considerations. Sarah had always believed in using talents for meaningful purposes. Her pragmatic compassion had been one of the qualities he'd loved most about her. Emma returned as Jason excused himself to finish homework, her expression thoughtful after the conversation with Diane. She's tough but fair, one of the few executives I always respected at Asclepius. She settled into the chair across from Michael. What are you thinking? Michael tapped the contract folder, organizing his thoughts. I'm thinking about whether this is compatible with what matters most. Jason, the garage, a life that functions for us both. He met her gaze directly. And I'm wondering what you're planning, whether you're going back to that world. Emma's expression shifted, vulnerability briefly replacing professional calculation. I've spent 3 years deliberately distant from corporate entanglements, building a simpler life, finding perspective. Her fingers traced an invisible pattern on the desk's worn surface. But this project, it's exactly what Asclepius should be doing. What I always wanted us to do. The unspoken question lingered between them, whether their paths would continue to intersect beyond this accidental collaboration, whether the connection formed over bent metal and calibration adjustments might extend to something more personal. I need to make some calls, think this through properly. Michael stood, professional practicality masking the more complex considerations beneath. Would you like to join us for dinner? Nothing fancy, but Jason's been asking. The evening unfolded with unexpected normalcy, the corporate drama temporarily set aside for the simple rhythms of domestic life. Jason dominated dinner conversation with enthusiastic explanations of his science project, his natural curiosity drawing Emma into a technical discussion that transformed the kitchen table into an impromptu laboratory. Michael observed their interaction, noting how naturally Emma had integrated into their small family unit over just a week. Her genuine interest in Jason's ideas, her ability to explain complex concepts at his level. Without condescension, the easy laughter they shared all signs of a connection that transcended the initial car repair arrangement. After Jason went to bed, Michael and Emma lingered over coffee at the kitchen table, the contract folder between them like an unopened letter containing news too significant to ignore, but too consequential to read casually. I left Asclepius because the company was drifting from its mission. Emma cradled her mug in both hands, the gesture oddly vulnerable for someone with her professional confidence. The neural interface technology we developed was being repositioned exclusively for high-end markets instead of broader accessibility. And you couldn't change the direction from within. Michael's observation carried understanding rather than judgment. Emma nodded, the memory visibly rekindling old frustrations. I founded that company with Eamon to democratize medical technology, to create solutions that average people could actually access. Then the investors came and quarterly projections became the driving force. So you walked away, started over. Michael studied her across the steam rising from his coffee, left behind the resources and platform you'd built. The accident gave me the perfect excuse. Emma's honesty held a hint of self-recrimination. I needed recovery time, which gave me space to disappear, reinvent myself as Emma Parker, independent consultant. Her smile carried ironic acknowledgement, though apparently not far enough to avoid being found eventually. The conversation shifted to practical considerations, the consulting structure that might allow Michael to contribute while maintaining his primary responsibilities, the potential for remote work with occasional trips to Seattle, the logistics of balancing two professional worlds with single fatherhood. We could modify my garage office, create a proper engineering workspace. Michael's thoughts organized into practical solutions, his mind already sketching possibilities. Set up digital collaboration tools, reserve the Seattle trips for critical development milestones. Emma's thoughtful nod encourages planning. The Skunk Works model actually favors that approach. Small distributed team focused on innovation rather than corporate protocols. Her expression grew more serious, but we should negotiate better contract terms. That exclusivity clause would severely limit your options if the project faces internal resistance. The evening concluded without firm decisions, but with a clearer framework for consideration. As Michael showed Emma to the door, the moment carried weight beyond a simple goodbye, a pivot point between professional collaboration and personal possibility, neither yet fully articulated. Thank you for dinner. Emma's words conveyed appreciation deeper than the simple meal warranted. It's been refreshing to experience normal family life, something I haven't had much of recently. Michael recognized the disclosure for the vulnerability it represented, a glimpse behind the professional competence to the human isolation beneath. You're welcome anytime. Jason would insist on it anyway. Her smile acknowledged the truth in his statement, the connection formed with his son that extended beyond their business arrangement. I'll call you tomorrow after I've spoken with Eamon about the contract terms. The days that followed established a new rhythm, morning hours devoted to regular garage business, afternoons split between car repairs and engineering refinements to their prototype. Michael consulted with a local attorney about the contract terms, making careful notes about necessary modifications to protect his independence while engaging with the corporate giant. Emma's presence became a regular feature at Foster Auto, her technical expertise naturally integrating into the daily operations. She fielded customer calls with practiced efficiency, organized parts deliveries, and continued refining the garage's business systems between work sessions on their evolving prototype. Jason flourished under the arrangement, his natural scientific curiosity nurtured by not one, but two technically minded adults. His questions about the leg brace evolved from simple curiosity to insightful observations that occasionally prompted design adjustments, evidence of an engineering mind developing under proper guidance. By Wednesday evening, Michael had reached his decision. The modified contract sat on his desk, annotations marking the terms he could accept and those requiring negotiation. The practical details had been resolved to his satisfaction, a consulting arrangement that respected his primary responsibilities while allowing meaningful contribution to a project with genuine purpose. What remained unresolved were the personal implications, the evolving connection with Emma that had grown from professional respect into something neither had explicitly named. The question of whether her temporary presence in their lives might transform into something more permanent lingered beneath every interaction, acknowledged through glances and small gestures rather than direct conversation. Thursday morning brought Eamon himself rather than another legal representative, his black SUV once again incongruous against the rural backdrop of Foster Auto. He emerged wearing casual attire rather than his corporate suit, a deliberate choice that Michael noted with appreciation for the psychological awareness it represented. "I wanted to address your concerns personally." Eamon accepted the coffee Michael offered, settling into the garage office with the relaxed confidence of someone accustomed to negotiation. "Diane forwarded your proposed modifications. Most seem quite reasonable." Emma joined them, her presence establishing a triangular dynamic that balanced corporate interest against individual priorities. Michael noticed how she positioned herself, not aligned fully with either side, but maintaining independent perspective, a bridge between worlds rather than an advocate for either. "The exclusivity clause is the main sticking point." Michael indicated the relevant section in the contract. "I can't lock myself into a single corporate relationship, especially with a project that might face internal resistance." Eamon nodded, surprising Michael with his ready acceptance. "Fair concern. How about we modify it to cover only direct competitors in the medical device space? You'd remain free to apply your engineering expertise in other industries and ensure the license grants manufacturing rights without surrendering ownership of the core intellectual property." Emma's addition reflected her experienced understanding of corporate acquisition strategies. Michael should retain the ability to pursue alternative applications if Asclepius decides not to commercialize specific implementations. The negotiation proceeded with unexpected smoothness, Eamon's genuine enthusiasm for the project evident in his willingness to accommodate reasonable requests. By lunchtime, they had reached agreement on modified terms that protected Michael's independence, while establishing a viable framework for collaboration. "One more thing." Eamon pulled a tablet from his briefcase as they concluded. "I brought something I think you'll find interesting." He opened a video file, turning the screen toward Michael and Emma. "This is Dr. Abrams from our clinical research team. She's been testing your prototype since Tuesday." The video showed a middle-aged woman with a mobility impairment similar to Emma's, walking with noticeably improved gait while wearing their modified brace design. Her expression registered surprise and delight as she navigated obstacles that had clearly presented challenges previously. Her nerve damage resulted from surgical complications rather than trauma, Eamon explained, but the functional limitations were similar. The improvement metrics are impressive: 27% increased mobility, 42% reduced pain during extended walking. Michael watched the video with growing emotion, the abstract concept of helping others suddenly concrete in this woman's visible relief and renewed capability. Beside him, Emma's sharp intake of breath conveyed similar impact. Their weekend project transformed from theoretical benefit to documented human improvement. "We've already had inquiries from 3 rehabilitation centers interested in clinical trials." Eamon's statement revealed the speed with which the corporate machinery had begun moving. "With your agreement today, we could have preliminary production units ready for testing within 6 weeks." The timeline represented corporate efficiency that Michael's garage-based operation could never have matched, the practical reality of resources and scale that made the partnership valuable despite its complications. He signed the modified agreement with steady hand commitment, crystallizing around the human impact rather than the financial calculations. "Welcome to Project Mobility." Eamon shook Michael's hand, satisfaction evident in his expression. "I've assigned our best project manager to coordinate logistics and establish secure communication channels for your remote collaboration." As Eamon departed with the signed contracts, Michael and Emma found themselves at the threshold of a new phase, their impromptu collaboration formalized into structured partnership with corporate backing and defined expectations. The prototype that had begun as a weekend project between strangers was now the foundation for a potentially significant medical innovation. So, Emma's single word carried multifaceted meaning: acknowledgement of their achievement, question about next step, exploration of possibilities beyond the professional development. So, Michael echoed recognition in his response. This is actually happening. The moment stretched between them, charged with potential energy ready to convert to action. The decision to pursue the project had been made, but the nature of their continuing personal connection remained undefined, professional collaboration established, while personal possibility remained in suspended animation. The garage phone's sharp ring interrupted the moment, yanking them back to immediate reality. Michael answered to hear Mrs. Henderson's distinctive voice describing strange noises from her car with dramatic embellishment. Normality reasserted itself through the mundane details of daily garage operation, oil changes and tune-ups, temporarily displacing medical innovation and personal possibility. Emma departed that afternoon for her first official meeting at Asclepius's Seattle headquarters, promising to return the following day with project materials and initial development timelines. The temporary separation created space for Michael to process the rapid changes of the past week, from rural mechanic to corporate consultant, from solitary engineer to collaborative innovator, from single father maintaining stability to parent considering expanded horizons. That evening, Michael cleared space in the garage's small storage room, envisioning its transformation into a proper engineering workspace. The physical act of reorganization paralleled his mental adjustments, making room for new possibilities while preserving essential foundations. Jason helped enthusiastically, his questions revealing both excitement about the project's potential and underlying concerns about disruption to their established routines. Will you still fix cars when you're making leg braces? His query carried layers of meaning beyond the simple words. Michael paused in his organization efforts, recognizing the importance of clarity. The garage isn't going anywhere, buddy. Car repairs pay our bills. The consulting work is additional, not replacement. Relief softened Jason's expression, followed by thoughtful consideration. But the leg braces are more important than fixing Mrs. Henderson's car again, right? They actually help people walk better. The innocent observation crystallized something Michael had been circling in his own considerations: the difference between valuable work and deeply meaningful work, between maintaining vehicles and potentially transforming lives. Both matter in different ways. Michael rested his hand on his son's shoulder. Keeping people's cars running safely is honest work that helps them get where they need to go. The leg brace project might help people who have trouble walking do more than they could before. Different kinds of importance. Jason nodded, absorbing this nuanced perspective with surprising maturity. And Emma will be helping with both, right? She's coming back tomorrow. The question confirmed Michael's suspicion that his son had developed significant attachment to their unexpected visitor, an emotional investment that added complexity to whatever decisions lay ahead regarding their evolving connection. She'll be back to work on the project. Michael kept his tone carefully neutral. She lives in Seattle, though. This isn't her home. She could stay here sometimes. Jason's suggestion emerged with the straightforward simplicity of childhood. The guest room is just full of boxes anyway. Michael ruffled his son's hair, deflecting the loaded suggestion with gentle humor. Let's finish clearing this space first before we start renovating other rooms. Okay. Friday morning brought Emma back to Foster Auto, her car loaded with project materials, technical specifications, and development timelines from Asclepius. She arrived with coffee and pastries, as had become their routine, but something in her demeanor had shifted, a renewed purpose and energy that seemed to have crystallized during her day at corporate headquarters. The project team is already assembling. She spread materials across the newly cleared workspace, excitement evident in her efficient movements. Eamon fast-tracked the budget approval and assigned some of the best engineers from the Hermes group. Michael examined the technical specifications, impressed by the rapid organization of resources. This timeline is ambitious. Production prototypes within 8 weeks. Asclepius can move quickly when properly motivated. Emma's smile acknowledged the power of corporate machinery when aligned with clear purpose. And this project has generated significant internal excitement. Even Victoria has expressed support. The day unfolded in productive collaboration, their working rhythm already established through the previous week's efforts. Michael found himself energized by the structured approach, his engineering mind engaging with challenges more complex than those presented by even the most problematic transmissions or engine rebuilds. As afternoon faded toward evening, Emma received a call from Eamon that visibly disrupted her focused concentration. Her expression shifted from professional engagement to concerned calculation as she listened to information Michael could only hear one side of. When did this happen? Her question emerged sharp with sudden tension. And they're specifically targeting the mobility project. She paced the small workspace freehand, unconsciously touching her leg brace beneath her slacks. I see, yes, I'll tell him. We'll prepare accordingly. Michael waited as she ended the call, reading the renewed stress in her posture. Problem, Emma's professional mask slipped, revealing genuine concern beneath. Competitive intelligence picked up movement from MedTech Innovations. They've apparently learned about our project and are attempting to fast-track a similar device. Her expression hardened with remembered corporate battles. Their CEO, Richard Haverford, is notorious for aggressive tactics to undermine competitors. How would they know about our design already? Michael's question addressed the practical security concern rather than corporate politics. Someone on the board may have leaked information, or they have sources within Asclepius. Emma's response reflected cynical familiarity with corporate espionage. The medical device industry is brutally competitive with billions at stake. Michael absorbed this new complication, the idealistic purpose of their projects, suddenly entangled with corporate competition he had deliberately left behind when exiting aerospace engineering. Does this change our development approach? It means we need to accelerate. Emma's strategic mind visibly engaged with the challenge. Eamon is filing preliminary patents based on our prototype immediately, but working devices in clinical trials would strengthen our position significantly. The conversation shifted to practical adjustments, compressed timelines, additional security precautions, strategic patent considerations. The corporate complexity Michael had hoped to minimize suddenly expanded, reminding him why he had originally chosen the more straightforward world of mechanical repairs over corporate engineering. As they concluded work for the day, the accumulated tension manifested in Emma's movements, the slight favoring of her injured leg, more pronounced after hours of focused concentration, her expression tight with both physical discomfort and strategic concerns. Stay for dinner. Michael's invitation emerged more directive than question, recognition of her need for respite from renewed corporate pressure. Jason's been talking about showing you his finished science project all day. Emma's hesitation reflected internal calculation rather than reluctance, weighing professional demands against human connection in the same way Michael had seen her evaluate engineering trade-offs. Her eventual nod carried surrender to necessity rather than simple acceptance. I should call Seattle again afterward, set up additional security protocols for our data transmission. Dinner transformed the atmosphere. Jason's enthusiastic presentation of his completed wind tunnel experiment drawing Emma from corporate concerns back to immediate human connection. Michael observed the change in her demeanor, tension gradually releasing as she engaged with the boys' discoveries, genuine interest replacing strategic calculation. Later, after Jason had gone to bed, they sat on the front porch, the rural quiet offering counterpoint to the day's intensified corporate complications. Stars spread across the clear night sky, their remote brilliance emphasizing the distance from Seattle's corporate towers and competitive machinations. I'd forgotten what this feels like. Emma's quiet observation carried no specific antecedent, yet Michael understood her meaning immediately. Normal life or distance from corporate warfare. His question offered gentle probe rather than challenge. Emma's slight smile acknowledged the accurate reading. Both. And having people around who care about the human impact rather than market positioning. She gestured toward the house where Jason slept. He asked better questions than most of the board members, more focused on what actually matters. The simple truth of her observation hung between them, recognition of values aligned beyond professional collaboration. Michael found himself studying her profile in the dim porch light, the competent executive and brilliant engineer who had unexpectedly become integral to their small family unit in just over a week. You could stay here. The words emerged before strategic consideration, honest invitation, rather than calculated offer. The guest room is available. Save you the drive back to Seattle tonight. Emma turned towards him, surprise briefly visible before careful consideration replaced it. That might be sensible given how early we need to start tomorrow, if you're sure it's not an imposition. The practical framing masked deeper implications they both recognized, but neither directly addressed a threshold crossed from daytime collaboration to overnight integration into the household, temporary yet symbolically significant. Morning brought new rhythm to the Foster household, three people navigating shared space with surprising ease, as if Emma's presence completed a pattern rather than disrupted established routine. Jason's delight at finding her at the breakfast table confirmed Michael's suspicion that his son had already emotionally invested in her continued presence in their lives. The weekend unfolded in dual-focus mornings devoted to project mobility work in the converted storage room, afternoons split between regular garage business and family activities that increasingly included Emma as natural participant rather than temporary visitor. By Sunday evening, the guest room had acquired personal touches, reflecting extended stay rather than overnight accommodation. Emma's laptop established on the small desk, a few books on the nightstand, clothing hung neatly in the previously empty closet. No explicit discussion had defined the arrangement's duration, the temporary nature assumed, yet increasingly blurred with each passing day. Monday morning brought reality crashing back in the form of Diane's sleek Porsche once again pulling into the Foster auto lot. Her expression as she emerged carried professional concern rather than corporate intimidation. "We have a problem." Diane dispensed with preliminary greetings, extracting a tablet from her briefcase. "MedTech filed these patent applications Friday afternoon. Their timing suggests they have detailed knowledge of our design." Emma accepted the tablet, her expression darkening as she scanned the technical diagrams. "These incorporate our load distribution approach, an adjustable tension system. Different external design, but identical mechanical principles." She passed the tablet to Michael, her voice tight with controlled anger. "They've had access to our specific innovations." Michael studied the diagram's engineering assessment, confirming Emma's conclusion. The mechanical principles they'd developed together had been replicated with only cosmetic modifications, clear evidence of information leakage from within Asclepius's corporate structure. How did they get these details? His question addressed the practical security breach rather than legal implications. "We believe someone on the project team has been compromised." Diane's blunt assessment carried professional frustration. "Eamon is conducting internal investigation, but the immediate concern is protecting your intellectual property." The conversation shifted to legal countermeasures, accelerated patent filings, preparation for potential litigation, documentation of original development timelines. Michael found himself unexpectedly grateful for the caution that had led him to document their design process thoroughly, each iteration carefully dated and witnessed in his engineering notebooks. "We need to get you both to Seattle immediately." Diane's statement came as conclusion rather than suggestion. "The legal team wants direct testimony about the original development process, and we need to establish clear documentation of your work predating their filing." The practical logistics immediately complicated Michael's carefully balanced life, Jason's school schedule, pending customer repairs, the household responsibilities that couldn't simply be abandoned for corporate emergency. Emma recognized the dilemma without him verbalizing it, her quick mind already formulating alternatives. Michael can provide his engineering notebooks and development documentation remotely. "I'll go to Seattle today for the legal meetings." Her solution reflected the understanding of his priorities that touched Michael unexpectedly. "We can set up secure video testimony if absolutely necessary, but the physical evidence is most critical immediately." Diane considered this compromise professional assessment, weighing practical needs against legal requirements. "That could work for the initial response. His in-person testimony will eventually be needed, but not necessarily today." As Diane departed with Michael's carefully packaged development notebooks, the corporate intrusion into their emerging routine left disruption in its wake. Emma moved with renewed tension, the corporate battle lines pulling her back toward the world she had deliberately left behind. "I should pack. The legal team will want to start immediately." Her efficient movements carried resignation beneath professional purpose. "I'll try to be back by Thursday at the latest." Michael recognized the pivot point, their unplanned cohabitation interrupted by corporate demands, the comfortable pattern developed over days now subject to separation and potential permanent disruption. The looming choice crystallized for both of them, whether to allow corporate complications to dictate their emerging connection or actively shape their relationship despite external pressures. "We'll be here." Michael's simple response carried meaning beyond the literal words, acknowledgement of stability offered against corporate chaos. commitment to continuation rather than disruption. Emma paused in her preparations, something vulnerable briefly visible beneath her professional composure. This is exactly what I left Asclepius to avoid. Corporate warfare overshadowing the actual work that matters. Her frustration emerged raw and honest. 3 years rebuilding a simpler life, and within 2 weeks of reconnecting with the company, I'm being pulled back into patent litigation and competitive intelligence battles. Michael recognized the conflict she faced, torn between the meaningful project that required corporate resources and the corporate complications that threatened to overwhelm its purpose. The parallel to his own departure from aerospace engineering struck him as he watched her struggle with the competing values. The difference is that you're not facing it alone this time. His observation offered perspective rather than solution. And the purpose hasn't changed even if the path has gotten more complicated. Emma's expression shifted consideration, replacing frustration as she absorbed his words. You're right. The goal still matters, making this technology accessible to people who need it. The corporate battles are just noise around the essential purpose. The moment stretched between them, mutual recognition, deepening beyond professional alignment to personal connection. Michael found himself stepping forward without conscious decision, the distance between them suddenly irrelevant, as he drew her into an embrace that expressed support beyond words. Emma's initial surprise gave way to reciprocal response, her arms tightening around him as she accepted the offered connection. The contact transcended professional collaboration, acknowledging the personal bond that had developed alongside their technical partnership. I'll be back as soon as possible. Her words carried promise beyond the immediate departure. This project and this place matter too much to abandon for corporate games. After Emma's departure for Seattle, Michael found himself confronting the emptiness her absence created, not just in the workspace where they'd collaborated, but in the household rhythms that had adjusted to include her. Jason's disappointed questions about her absence revealed his son had already incorporated her into his expectation of daily life, another emotional attachment formed in the vacuum left by his mother's death. The week unfolded in divided focus mornings, handling regular garage business afternoons, continuing project mobility work, through remote collaboration with the Seattle team evenings, maintaining the household routines that structured Jason's life. Emma's daily video calls provided technical continuity alongside personal connection, her facial expressions revealing the corporate stress she verbalized only partially. By Thursday, the initial legal crisis had stabilized into ongoing strategic response. Asclepius had filed counterclaims that established their priority dates, secured preliminary injunctions against MedTech's development efforts, and initiated forensic investigation into the information leak. Emma's evening call carried visible relief beneath continued professional focus. The legal team believes we've established solid priority position. MedTech's development timeline doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Michael noted the shadows beneath her eyes, evidence of long days navigating corporate warfare rather than the engineering challenges that energized her. When are you coming back? The directness of his question acknowledged what had remained largely unspoken, that her place was no longer simply at corporate headquarters, but also in the household and workspace they had established together. Emma's expression softened tension, temporarily replaced by connection across the digital distance. Tomorrow afternoon, Eamon has finally accepted that I can contribute more effectively from your location than trapped in legal meetings here. Her smile carried wry acknowledgement of corporate realities. I've made it clear that my consulting arrangement doesn't require physical presence at headquarters. The confirmation of her return settled something in Michael that had remained unsettled throughout the separation. Uncertainty about whether corporate demands might permanently reclaim her, whether the connection they had begun to build might be sacrificed to professional obligations. Friday afternoon brought Emma's Mercedes back to Foster Auto, her expression lightening visibly as she stepped from the corporate world back into the rural environment they had established as their collaborative base. Jason's enthusiastic greeting as he returned from school confirmed the household had indeed become three-person unit rather than two with temporary visitor. I brought dinner. Emma lifted bags from the passenger seat. And something else you might find interesting. She extracted a package from the trunk, her smile suggesting significance beyond the plain brown wrapper. The first production prototype, hot off the fabrication line this morning. Inside the package lay a refined version of their original design, precision manufactured components, replacing the hand-finished elements of their garage creation, professional finishing, elevating functional engineering to commercial product. The evolution from weekend project to medical device was visually striking tangible evidence of corporate resources amplifying individual innovation. They've incorporated all our design refinements. Michael examined the device with professional appreciation, noting the improvements while recognizing the core principles they had established together. Production quality with the soul of our original design. Exactly what I insisted on. Emma's satisfaction reflected successful navigation of corporate processes without compromising essential purpose. And the preliminary manufacturing cost analysis confirms we can hit the price point for insurance reimbursement. The shared achievement means it created natural celebration the evening unfolding with relaxed camaraderie that had been missing during their separation. Jason proudly showed Emma his A-plus science project report, the wind tunnel experiment having earned special recognition from his teacher. Michael noticed how naturally she had reintegrated into their household patterns, her corporate tension gradually releasing with each hour away from headquarters. After Jason's bedtime, they settled on the front porch, the evening quiet, encouraging reflection on the path that had brought them to this point, from broken-down Mercedes to corporate patent battles in just 2 weeks of shared experience. I've been thinking about next steps. Emma's words emerged thoughtful rather than declarative, both for the project and other considerations. Michael recognized the deliberate opening toward territory they had circled but not directly addressed. What kind of considerations? Emma turned toward him, professional calculation replaced by personal vulnerability. I've maintained my Seattle apartment as a base for consulting work, but I've spent more time here in the past 2 weeks than there in the past month. Her direct gaze carried question beneath the statement. It feels more like home here than anywhere has in years. The simple acknowledgement opened space for the conversation they had been approaching obliquely, the personal connection that had developed alongside their professional collaboration, the potential for relationship beyond project partnership. The guest room works for temporary arrangements. Michael's response addressed practical considerations while inviting deeper discussion. But long-term would require more thoughtful planning. Are we talking about long-term then? Emma's question cut directly to the essential point characteristic, precision, removing ambiguity. Michael considered her question with the careful assessment he applied to engineering problems, analyzing variables, calculating outcomes, evaluating sustainability. I think we are. If that's something you're considering too. Emma's smile emerged slowly, relief and anticipation mingling in her expression. I am, despite the corporate complications and the unusual circumstances that brought us together. Her hand found his in the gathering darkness, or perhaps because of them. Shared purpose is a powerful foundation. The connection between them deepened in the quiet moment, professional respect and personal attraction, converging into something neither had anticipated when a damaged Mercedes had limped into Foster Auto just over 2 weeks earlier. The path forward remained complex, corporate partnerships balancing against independent priorities, household integration requiring thoughtful adaptation, new relationship developing within established family structure. We'll need to talk with Jason. Michael's practical consideration reflected his primary commitment. He's already attached, but making this official would still be significant change. He's remarkably perceptive. Emma's observation carried genuine appreciation rather than casual compliment, and surprisingly adaptive for his age. He processes complex changes more effectively than most adults I know. Their conversation extended into the night, practical planning interwoven with deeper connection, two problem solvers approaching relationship with both emotional investment and logical consideration, neither allowing corporate complexities to overshadow human priorities. Saturday morning brought implementation of their first decision, converting Emma's status from guest to household member. Jason's enthusiastic participation in reorganizing space reflected his unambiguous approval of the arrangement, his matter-of-fact acceptance suggesting he had anticipated this development before they had explicitly defined it. Emma's tools should go on this shelf with yours, Dad. His organizational suggestion carried symbolic weight beyond practical arrangement. Since you work on the same projects now. The weekend unfolded in dual purpose, establishing Emma's integration into the household while continuing project mobility development with renewed focus. The production prototype underwent testing and refinement, each adjustment documented for the manufacturing team in Seattle with the precision that had characterized their collaboration from the beginning. Monday brought unexpected visitors, not corporate lawyers this time, but Dr. Abrams from Asclepius's clinical research team, accompanied by an older man whose pronounced limp immediately identified him as potential brace recipient rather than company representative. Emma Michael, this is Robert Jennings. Dr. Abrams made introductions with professional warmth. He's agreed to participate in our initial patient testing program. His nerve damage resulted from military service with similar functional limitations to the cases we've been targeting. Robert's weathered face carried both skepticism and cautious hope as he eyed the prototype device. The VA docs told me I was stuck with this. He gestured to the bulky standard brace visible beneath his pant leg. Said nerve damage doesn't get better, just gets managed. Emma approached with professional confidence, tempered by personal understanding. They're right that nerve damage doesn't heal the way other injuries might, but that doesn't mean mobility can't be improved with better assistive technology. The fitting process transformed abstract engineering into human impact adjustments, calibrated to Robert's specific gait pattern tension settings, modified to accommodate his particular nerve damage stability mechanisms, aligned with his unique musculature. Michael observed Emma's interaction with their first official patient, noting the natural integration of technical expertise with genuine empathy born from shared experience. Try a few steps now. Emma stepped back after completing the final adjustments. It will feel strange initially. Your body needs to adapt to the different support pattern. Robert rose cautiously, decades of compensatory movement patterns evident in his hesitant first step. His expression shifted from concentration to surprise as the brace supported his damaged leg differently than his previous device, distributing weight away from painful pressure points while maintaining stability. "Well, I'll be damned." The simple exclamation carried emotional weight beyond the casual words. Robert took another step, then another, his movement visibly smoother with each iteration as he adapted to the new support system. "It doesn't catch when I pivot. And the pressure here," he gestured to his lower calf, "it's completely different." Abrams observed with clinical assessment overlaid with evident satisfaction. The quantitative improvements are impressive, but the qualitative experience is equally important for patient adoption. As Robert completed a circuit of the garage with increasingly confident steps, the abstract purpose of Project Mobility crystallized into concrete human impact, visible improvement in one person's daily capability, practical enhancement of life quality through applied engineering. This is why we founded Asclepius. Emma's quiet observation carried equal parts satisfaction and vindication. Not for market share or investor returns, but for moments exactly like this. Michael watched as Robert continued testing the device, noting both the technical performance and the emotional transformation evident in the man's expression, from skeptical patient to enthusiastic participant, from passive recipient to engaged collaborator, offering feedback for further refinement. The human impact transcended corporate complications, patent battles, and competitive maneuvering. A reminder that behind the business structures and legal frameworks lay the essential purpose that had brought them together. Their weekend project, born from compassion and technical creativity, had evolved through corporate development into practical solution, making meaningful difference in real lives. As Dr. Abrams conducted formal assessment measurements and Robert continued exploring his expanded mobility, Emma moved to stand beside Michael, their shared achievement creating natural connection. Her hand found his professional partnership and personal relationship converging in quiet acknowledgement. "This feels like just the beginning." Michael's observation encompassed both their professional collaboration and personal connection. Emma's smile carried confidence built on shared purpose and proven capability. "It is, for the project and for us." The moment crystallized future direction emerging from accidental beginning, a broken-down Mercedes leading to reclaimed engineering. Purpose, corporate partnership balanced with independent values, new relationship built on shared vision and complementary strengths. The path forward would navigate corporate complexities while maintaining human priorities, technical innovation, serving genuine need rather than market positioning. Robert's voice broke through their reflection, his practical assessment cutting to the essential truth. "Don't know all the technical details of how this works, but I know it makes a real difference. When can other vets get access to these The simple question refocused their attention on the core purpose that had united them, creating technology that improved real lives, engineering solutions that expanded human capability, innovation that served genuine need rather than corporate metrics. Whatever corporate battles might lie ahead, whatever relationship challenges might require navigation, the foundational purpose remained clear and compelling. That's exactly what we're working toward. Michael's response addressed both Robert's immediate question and their larger shared mission, making sure this technology reaches everyone who needs it.